Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Ramadan Journey. I'm your host Afif Khan, and we are joined by Imam Muhammad Al-Asi. He's the author of the Ascended Quran, the first ever tafsir of the Quran written in the English language. We have been having some discussions about Ramadan, and we've gone through the first 2 or 3 ayat related to the subject. And today we're going to discuss some of the important events that happened in early Islamic history that happened during Ramadan. And so Imam Al-Asi, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
And so let us just go ahead and talk about some of these events and see how they feed into the larger picture. Some of these events that we are referring to are the very first revelation of the Quran, the Battle of Badr, the digging of the trench before the Battle of Al-Ahzab, and then the liberation of Mecca. And so insofar as these events are concerned, could you provide us some details about why these events perhaps took place at a time when the Muslims were fasting?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala khayri khalqihi Sayyid al-Anbiya'i wal-Mursaleen Rahmatullahi lil-Alameen Muhammadin ibn Abdullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi al-Mayameen. The month of Ramadan, obviously, from all the indications that we have in life around us today, the way Muslims observe the month of Ramadan, they have an attitude of, and this I think is transcultural. It's not specific to any culture. It's just there anywhere you may go. They have the lackadaisical type of behavior in which there is no involvement in events that demand physical or mental input. In many places they sleep during the day, or they spend the majority of daytime when they are fasting taking it easy. Some places in Muslim countries, workers are dismissed from their offices early in the day. School programs are constricted. They take away from the daily schedule about 2 hours at least, and so forth and so on. Now, if we compare that, and this is the culture, what has become the local culture of fasting in the different areas where Muslims practice and observe the fast. But when we take that and then we compare it with the very demanding tasks that were performed by the Muslims who were fasting the first Ramadans in Islam, we find that they were dealing with the day-to-day issues, whatever their nature was. Once again, when you, as much as is possible, of course, because we have certain history books and references to refer to, when you go back to this, the first thing that you realize, you can't dig out any pieces of information indicating excuse me, that Muslims used to go to sleep during the day. The second thing that strikes you is Ramadan was a month, of course, in the nature of Ramadan, it circulates throughout the year. They were performing their daily duties, whatever they were. If a person had to go out to the field, they'd go out to the field. If a person had to do some labor, they would do the labor. In the highlights of the month of Ramadan in our Islamic history, major battles were fought in Ramadan.
Do militaries in majority Muslim countries nowadays, are they required to fast in Ramadan, or they just sort of don't pay it? They just pay no attention to it.
In the traditionalist type of Muslim countries, where there's a conservative form of government, the practice of Ramadan is basically a traditional thing. No one, as far as the governments are concerned, no one interferes with the Muslims' preference to fast and these types of things. They're left on their own. In some other Muslim countries, Ramadan is factored in to the schedules of the troops. So the government sort of endorses in a very mild way the fasting of the troops. But in the more rigorous secular countries in the Muslim world, it's not encouraged to fast. Yeah. So
because they feel that it reduces the physical capacity to go out and perform as a soldier.
That's right. They think that by denying the body its 3 squares a day, then you are taking away from the military preparedness of whatever service that is, the Army, the Marines, the Navy, or whatever it happens to be. So even, back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, when secularism was in its heyday, when it was peaking in certain Muslim countries, soldiers were told point blank, especially if there was a type of national danger of some sort, that you don't have to fast. Just forget about it and all of this. You can make up for it later, or So secularism has its way of eroding Islamic commitments and Islamic practices.
We'll come back to this point in just a few minutes. We're going to take a short break now from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned.
Welcome Ramadan. Welcome Ramadan.
And we're back. We were talking about some of the major events that took place during Ramadan in prophetic history. And so now we'll turn again to some of these events and the preparation at the time of the Prophet, as opposed to the kind of approach that the Muslims take nowadays. If we were to be cognizant of the reality today, one would think that you would have to practice with 5 or 6 Ramadans before you go out to battle. But at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims had only fasted 1 Ramadan, and then they immediately went out to the Battle of Badr. And so it seems like the prophetic example in the way that the Muslims were trained, they were trained to conquer whatever personal issues they might have had with regard to disciplining their willpower, and then they were required to exercise that willpower out on the battlefront. Nowadays, we spend an eternity training our willpower without having any desire to go out and exercise that in the field of exertion. And so, could you comment on that?
That's a very important point. It really places the focus on the transfer of Islam into an academic effort or a theoretical concept, instead of Islam becoming a behavioral development. In our time, in the schools, in the institutions that are related to Islam in any way, whether they are elementary or whether they are universities, much emphasis is placed on the simple understanding, or instead of using the word simple, the isolated understanding of Islam. Meaning, if you stash your head with information about Islam, the more you do so, the more promoted you are in your Islam. This is alien. If this type of approach to Islam or this type of gaining Islam is alien to the way that Allah's Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him and his, the way Allah's Prophet taught and then practiced this Islam simultaneously with the Muslims around him. That is applicable in the case of Ramadan. It's applicable in many other cases. The fact of the matter is, during that time, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not gather some people in a masjid in some type of halaqah fashion, or did not build a school. I mean, this is very important. It's not that the Prophet is against education or gaining knowledge or, advancing as far as the intellectual activity is concerned. No. All of Islam, the Quran, the Prophet, everything is for that. It's just the methodology that's being used is very different. What we have today is very different than what we had during the time of the Prophet. During the time of the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. During his time, we're speaking about Ramadan, we're speaking about fasting. So if you have to fast, if you have to observe the month of Ramadan, you do that in the thick and thin of lively affairs.
It means you don't delay important activities.
No. Whatever they are, you just do it. It's that simple. And through this integration of knowledge with work as they go together, that became the Islamic school. That became the Islamic academy. So the learning or enhancing one's Islamic character was done in real life. That was the school. That was the graduation field. And so when the Muslims were fasting, they went to Badr. There was no one sort of asking, wait a minute, wouldn't it have been better for us to prepare ourselves in the sense that, we charge our lives with these rituals, whether they are salah or zakah or siyam, and these, we charge ourselves with these rituals, and then after we are charged, we go out there and do what has to be done.
Yeah, nowadays they use that phrase purification of the nafs.
Yeah.
And so they continue to do that for some time, thinking that will give them the kind of charge that you're talking about to go out and do the things they need to do.
Yeah. But now the word purification of the nafs is fine. We all agree with that.
But it appears to be an end in and of itself.
Yeah. This is where they go wrong. They think that you can purify yourself when you are disentangled from the obligations of life. You withdraw from what has to be done and you purify yourself. That's the wrong approach. That's why we Muslims keep on going in vicious circles and we don't get anywhere. People are advancing, moving ahead, gaining grounds in life, doing what has to be done. And we're back here, how many years, how many generations, how many centuries have been spent in an approach to Islam that says, we have to study this, we have to spend all who said, where did this come from? Don't we say we refer ourselves to Allah and His Prophet, to the Quran and to the Sunnah? And so where did this come from? So when we are, as Muslims, obliged to fast, everyone accepts that. Okay, fine, we're fasting. But who said in observing this fast, we can't go to such activities and involvements as the Battle of Badr, or the liberation of Mecca, or the Battle of Ain Jalut, or Hattin? These are major milestones in Islamic history, and they were accomplished during the month of Ramadan when Muslims were practicing this fast.
It's all very interesting, and we need to go into that and some of these other details in quite a bit more depth. And so we'll explore some of these ideas when we come back. We need to take a break with our sponsors. Please stay tuned.
Welcome Ramadan. Welcome Ramadan.
Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back. We are talking about some of the major events that took place in Ramadan, and the kind of mentality that existed at the time of the Prophet, and how that contrasts with the approach that Muslims are taking nowadays. What I would like to get into now is something which is less event related and more related to the words of the Quran. The words for fasting start out, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam. Later on in the Quran, a similar kind of construction is related to the order given to the Muslims to go out and fight, kutiba alaykum al-qital. And so there appears to be a correspondence between the inner reality and the outer reality. And so what kind of consciousness is developed in Ramadan to cause the Muslims to be cognizant of this interplay between the inner reality and the outer reality?
Yes. Before I answer that question, I think a little mental observation should be done concerning the wording or the construct kutiba alaykum or katabna alaykum or kutiba alayhim. This phraseology. What follows this, in the majority of cases, is something that is demanding, is a task. It's something that is going to extract effort from you, either psychological effort or physical effort. كتب عليكم إذا حضر أحدكم الموت. An assignment to you is that when death inflicts one of you, when someone is about to die, then it goes on to say al-wasiyya, and so someone here after the word kutiba, we have the instructions pertaining to the distribution of wealth. So that's something that, if you're a family member, someone would prefer some of this wealth or most of this wealth go to him or to her. But then when the details come that there's going to be a distribution process and there's going to be a will of sorts and all this, so after the phraseology kutiba alaykum, or it's almost like your psychology and your attention is anticipating something that's going to be demanding. In this case, and to come back to your question, which pertains to two ayat in the Quran, the ayah that we've been discussing now for some time, pertaining to the month-long fast of Ramadan. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام. This mandatory observance of a siyam is in the world inside, because during the day of fasting, a person is more sensitized to his internal or her internal self. There are internal thoughts, there are internal inclinations, there are internal urges, there are internal instincts. All of these are always there with us, whether we're in Ramadan or outside of Ramadan. We always have these. But what happens during the month of Ramadan is we are more aware, provided we are observing the fast as it should be observed, we are more aware. It's like we're going through a tune-up process in which we begin to concentrate more on the feelings of hunger or the feelings of I'm going to talk, I'm going to speak, I'm going to say this. And so anything has to do with appetite and urges and desires and inclinations and proclivities, all of these things. So this is an internal thing. But when we juxtapose that with when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كتب عليكم القتال وهو كره لكم وعسى أن تكرهوا شيئا وهو خير لكم وعسى أن تحبوا شيئا وهو شر لكم والله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون. This ayah is saying that combat duty has been assigned to you. So, as we said initially, after we listen to the words kutiba alaykum, we're expecting something to be mentioned that is going to demand something from us. Well, in this instance, it's demanding our life, potentially. If we're going out for combat duty, that means that I may be mortally injured. I may lose a limb. I may, so, yeah, there's, so anyways, in the month of Ramadan, when we are fulfilling this act of fasting, I think we should be conscious of the fact that the sacrifice that we do, it's not nothing major. It's just giving up some food and some nourishments during the day. But then there are other physical sacrifices which seem to some people to be more threatening than the act of fasting. But if we were synchronized, and maybe we can get to that later on, we will have some type of balance in our psychological and physical self, whereby fasting, as we observe it, is as demanding as sacrificing the most precious that we have. And then there's not that discrepancy in our minds and in our internal selves between one kutiba alaykum and the other kutiba alaykum.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We'd like to continue with this explanation, and as we proceed to the succeeding ayat in this section about Ramadan, we're going to have some more time to get a little more deeply into the interplay between the inner self and the outer self. We do thank you for joining in with us today. We hope that you tune in again tomorrow, same time, same channel. Again, thank you for participating with us in this journey on Ramadan. And we hope to see you again tomorrow. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.